Hey, everybody. Really excited to speak with Brant today, who just broke into HubSpot as an account executive. Brant, really cool background we were talking about before we started recording. Maybe as a starting point, share kind of where you were before looking at tech sales, and we'll start to break it down from there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I just wanted to start out. Thank you guys so much for having me. When I started this journey back in November, I did not think that I would be breaking in as an AE, let alone at a great company like HubSpot. So first of all, just thank you guys for what you're doing. So real high level background. I came from an athletic background. So I played golf in high school and then also in college. And then actually that transitioned into a kind of a very short career in professional long drive. So it's just kind of hitting the ball as far as you can. Did that for about 4 years until injuries sidelined me. And professionally, actually started my own branded merchandise and promotional product company out of college. Ran that for about 3.5 years. Had some successes and some failures there. Kind of led the sales efforts from ground zero. Amassed a decent sized client base before my business partner and I decided to go in different directions. And then moving into the current role that I'm in, that I'm finishing up. I'm an account executive at a high-end business card company called My Metal Business Card. So came in there as the first AE, pretty much had a blank canvas to grow revenues there, have had a lot of success. But ultimately a couple things, have been a concern. Like I listened to a lot of Alex Hormozy, and he talks about when you're looking at a new opportunity or the opportunity vehicle you're in, he looks at the gross margin. So are they high? Number two, is the total addressable market big enough to where you're going to make the amount of money you want to make? And is the industry growing? So when we're talking about selling high-end business cards, market's decreasing 15% year over year, total addressable market shrinking, and the gross margins are pretty low. So it was definitely a concern for me for a while. And that's when I started looking around and came across your guys' channel. And, here we are now.
No, it's awesome, man. I love that. And I find, honestly, I think some of the people that do the best in tech sales have tried these different ventures on their own. And maybe that's a question as well, right? Like you've done a lot on your own. I know we talked before, you built the business to a pretty significant size, decided to pivot, and you already are doing direct sales as an account executive in a different industry. What goes into the decision to say, hey, I actually do want to invest in a formal program versus figuring it out on your own?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. Honestly, I've been thinking about making a change for a while just because I was concerned about my current opportunity vehicle, just with it shrinking. But I was in a place where I didn't really know what to do. I like to have a structured process mapped out for myself, just like I've done in my current business, in my current role. So I knew I wanted to make a change. And when I came across your course, when I was watching the testimonials, it seemed like you guys had a very mapped out process. And that's something that was very attractive. So when I got into the program, it was very clear. I was like, oh, okay, this is what people are doing. And I'm just going to follow that process. And so as I went through the course, I started applying for jobs. And from about beginning of December through when I landed this job, I applied for 8 roles. So not a large amount of volume, but I was being very particular on which companies I was applying to. And through that process, I was 8 for 8 in terms of landing at least the first round interview. So I was like, okay, this process works.
Nice. I love it. Even taking a step back, I think you're talking about just seeing all the case studies, the process and everything outlined. We were just chatting about this right before we pressed record, but you just kind of jumped into higher levels, didn't even really look at other programs. What was it about higher levels? Like, was there anything else apart from the process and the testimonials that made you say, like, yeah, this just feels like a no-brainer? Like, there's no need to even go look at anything else.
Couple things. My girlfriend works at ADP, and she's been in sales there for almost 2 years. And I've seen her. She had no sales experience when she got into ADP. I know it's kind of quasi tech, HCM. She is selling a SaaS product, but I saw the talent that was on their team, the level of resources that they put into their sales enablement, and her income starting to skyrocket pretty quickly. And I was like, you know what, that was one of the dominoes where I thought, okay, maybe I need to make a change here. Number two, I have a very good friend, Benji, who's also in tech sales, and he lives in Austin, Texas. He worked for a call center automation software, and now he works for a company called Miro. And so I hopped on with him when I found your course, And I was like, hey, do you know about these guys? Like, how is it in tech sales? And he had, he was pretty much like, yeah, tech sales is where it's at. So that's when I decided to invest in the course.
Nice. Damn, you got all these connections already. You know people at Miro and all these top companies. There you go. Oh, I love it. I love it. I think you did everything, by the way, just throwing this out, like you did everything right at every single stage, which is super, super impressive. Your background is very similar to my own, but I actually even think that you did even better than myself when I was first breaking it. So,
I don't know about that.
I love it. I love it. Now that you've been through the program, obviously, like, you crushed it. HubSpot is a huge achievement, especially just account executive. What do you feel like, inside the program was maybe like the most valuable, or was there like a specific part of it that was like, hey, this just started getting me a lot more results, or started getting me results faster? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I went through the entire course and I did everything like to a T, but the biggest thing was just the process for reaching out and standing out in the interview process. So, if you just apply on LinkedIn and don't do anything further, like you pretty much are lost at that point, at least in terms of your application. So applied, found the decision influencers, whether that be the sales manager, or if you don't know who the sales manager is, like the highest possible person that you could find. Like, for example, if I'm applying for an SDR role, I'm finding the head of SDRs, or, for example, I went through the Atlassian interview process, and it was the head of enterprise SDRs worldwide. I found them, messaged them on LinkedIn, found their information on Apollo, cold called them, and ultimately that would lead to that very high rate of at least getting that first round interview. So I think it was just that process where I was like, wow, I didn't know people were doing this. And number two, I didn't know how much that could allow you to stand out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And those little things obviously set you apart. I'd love to speak on the interview process itself. Someone in your situation, or I know like we spoke with Michael a couple of weeks ago, who's a gym owner transitioning into tech sales. You're a business owner, former athlete. You've got all these eclectic experiences, which I think are great. How do you take that and convince a company when you're interviewing that, hey, I do want to do this role, I am the best candidate? I'd be curious how you kind of packaged all that and made it really compelling.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about this. So from literally recruiter interview all the way through, let's take HubSpot, for example, all the way through the director interview in the final round, they all ask, tell me some form of like, tell me about yourself. So having a very well thought out but concise answer to that is huge. So I kind of went through it already, but just packaging all of your life experiences, whether that be personal and professional, and tying that to the skills that you need in that job are essential. And don't expect that the recruiter is going to be passing that on to the sales manager, and the sales manager is going to be passing it on to the director. Like they're going to ask you that question in one form or another.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd be curious too, not having direct tech experience, like obviously you crushed the process. Is there anything that you had to learn along the way when it comes to maybe more the exercises or like the cold call role plays or presentations? Any advice you'd give to anyone preparing for those final rounds?
Yes. And I would recommend highly, this is in the course as well, when you apply and you get that first round interview, or even before, adding a bunch of people at the company that are in that role and trying to get on a call. So this happened, at HubSpot. HubSpot was a little bit different because I came across a LinkedIn post that said, hey, we're hiring for a bunch of AE and SDR positions, shoot me a message if you think you would be a good fit. And so I reached out to a bunch of people that were in either SDR or AE positions. Andrea, who, if she's watching this, she's an amazing human being. She was able to hop on a call with me. We really hit it off. And she, I was eyeing the BDR position just because I was okay breaking into, a lower level role just so I could get my foot in the door. I was okay with kind of taking that step back to take 2 steps forward in the medium to long run. But she saw my sales experience, really pushed me to apply for the AE position. And she helped me through every step of the process. And I guess talking about, what I had to learn, every step of the HubSpot process was a different stage in their deal cycle. So the recruiter was kind of asking about what my prospecting strategy was. Then the her sales manager interview was a mock cold call. Then the third round was a mock discovery call. And every stage, Andrea was helping me through that process just to understand what they're looking for, what their qualifying criteria was, how she ran a discovery, how she ran a demo. And so I was able to speak to it throughout that process. So the sales manager, the director, all the people at HubSpot that interviewed me, could see, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. But honestly, if I didn't have her, it would have been a lot more difficult. Let's put it that way.
So how did you, and maybe just for everybody else out there, how did you, where is Andrea on the org chart of all this stuff here? And how did you broker that connection to her in the first place? I think that's a good
yeah.
place.
Yeah. So she is an SMBAE as well, which is the position that I just got. It's called a growth specialist, kind of externally. So I actually reached out to a couple different people at HubSpot. She was one of them. I hit her with a LinkedIn message and also an email. I found her on Apollo. Actually, you know what? I think I shot her an email first, and then I sent her a LinkedIn message that said like, hey, just sent you an email. Besides what kind of, BDR at that time, that's the position I was targeting. What type of BDR would I be if I couldn't find your email? Just to throw a little humor in there. And she responded and said, love the approach, would love to hop on a call with you. And then, just had a 15-minute call and it kind of went from there.
Nice. No, I love that approach too. And it's funny because most people are so centered on, just getting the interview. And I think that's fair, right? Especially because there's so many, like, you can't just go super hard on one company and just like have laser focus. I mean, you can, but usually it doesn't just turn out the way that it does here. But you went the extra mile, right? You're connecting with SMBAEs, really like putting together the pieces. And it really, like, I hate to say this, but it's always like, the more you want it, right? Like the more of these things that you do that are uncomfortable 100% up front, the more you kind of just stack up the odds of you, getting further, progressing, and you went all the way. So I love it.
That's a really good point too, because, this was obviously my 8th interview process that I went through. I think if it was my first one that I had gone through, I wouldn't quite have been ready to land that role yet. I think every interview process that I went through built on themselves. So for example, like the first interview process that I went through was with Paycom, and, made it relatively far through the process, but there were some things where I was like, okay, I got to tighten this answer up, or I rambled a little bit there. So just going back and kind of analyzing, hey, how did I do in that interview? Whether you got rejected or you got passed on, iterating over time, that was huge.
Yeah. Most people just end up giving up, which I think, so it's actually kind of ironic. And I speak to Eric about this a lot, but it's usually the people with the most stacked resumes that just, they get like 1 or 2 rejections. And it's like, you have the opportunity to go wherever you want, but they get 1 or 2 rejections and they just give up. Yeah. And it's always the people who come in who are more humble, who are like, hey, exactly your approach, where it's like, I'm willing to go, SDR. I'm willing to do these things because I know it's going to put me forward like 1-2 years from now. And who cares? It's a year. Like, it's a year to double your, anyway. So I'm not going to get into all that stuff here, but I think you carried yourself well. I mean, it's very obvious to me, and I'm sure to Eric as well, that you're going to be a killer fit at HubSpot. Maybe in closing, like you've gone through a lot here. You have a crazy background, lots of experience. I've gone through the whole ringer now of SDR, AE, different things. Maybe if you could go back in time, give your younger self, some piece of advice, or for anybody else out there who are considering maybe a boot camp, like higher levels, anything you want to leave them with.
Yeah. I mean, I would say just follow the process. I think you guys set the expectation very well, kind of hitting on a previous point that you just talked about. Like, you're going to have failures and you're going to have rejections. Like, for example, I got rejected from like 4 or 5 different companies during this process. And I just knew that was part of growth and part of learning. And eventually I knew that if I put in the work and keep iterating and improving, that I was going to get there. So I would say, shameless plug, invest in the program for sure, because it's gold. Follow the process, do everything you can. Like you guys say all the time, like, reaching out to the hiring managers is just table stakes. Like, for example, I'll use Paycom again. When I came into that first interview with the sales manager, she was like, we had over 400 applicants for this role. You were the only one to cold call me. And I was like, oh, wow. I was like, I just expected that people were going to be doing it, but a lot of people aren't. So it's like, if you just have a modicum of like, go-getterness, you can really stand out in that process. So that's my parting advice.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, it's funny because these are top companies too, right? It's top logos. And to make a long story short, but I think for anybody else out there watching this, I think this just kind of goes to show, like, there's a lot of people that we talk to that come to higher levels all the time, and they always say, hey, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't know if this is going to work. And it's like, here's the proof in the pudding, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's like nobody doing these things, right? There's very, very few people. So it is so easy to stand out. It is so easy if you're just willing to put in a little bit extra time and effort and get a little bit uncomfortable, because it's not about crushing the cold call and having the perfect script. It's literally just about picking up the phone, and you can completely like just bomb that cold call, but it shows that you're coachable. It shows that you're willing to do it. I think that goes way further than you trying to do anything else, or like just mass applying on LinkedIn. So
I mean, you gotta get uncomfortable. And every time I would make those cold calls, I'd be sitting there and my heart would be racing. But what I did was I had a script for if they answered and a script for if they didn't answer. All 8 times I made that call or those calls, if it was multiple people, nobody answered. But I would always like double dial just to see if they would answer. And then I would usually just end up leaving a voicemail. But pretty much every single one of them mentioned that they got that phone call, and it was a huge, plus.
Nice. Yeah. I love it. Well, Brant, this was awesome. Again, huge congrats on the role. I'm super excited just to see you like grow and crush. And I think you're 100% not only a great fit for HubSpot, but also a great fit for just AE in general. That's very, very rare that I say that for people that are coming in. You had sales experience before this, but it is still very rare to make this transformation and just like break in without having been at, some other top SaaS company as an AE before you go to HubSpot. So, but we appreciate the time. For everybody else watching, we're going to drop Brant's LinkedIn down below. So Brant, if you're not too busy ramping and, taking calls, definitely hit him up because there's a lot of good stuff. Eric, I don't know if you have any famous last words, but this was killer.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. Really appreciate it, and excited to see where it takes you over the next 12, 24 months, etc. So congrats.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys so much. I couldn't have done this. I was the one doing the work, but it was really a team effort. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing.